What's going on?
Hello.
So-
Can you hear me good? Is everything all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm trying to turn down some of this volume. Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah, what's up?
Okay. Well, what's your primary concerns right now with grounding axioms, I guess?
One, I don't even know what it is to ground axiom. So like all of it's a problem. It's all a mystery. I just wish to know things.
Oh. Well,
Ooh. Oh shit.
everything's a mystery.
Yep.
Okay. Well, is there any problems you're running into if you don't have this conversation?
No, but sometimes I'm concerned I'm being hypocritical with how I judge something, and I want to make sure that is this what axioms are for, by the way? To like make sure that I approach every argument or maybe moral argument, I'm not sure, that I'm consistent. Like that's my biggest concern, especially with just dealing with philosophy in general.
Well, okay. Axioms. Okay. I don't know whether I should talk about that or that. Okay, we'll do this first. Okay, axioms in general. It's not going to be a huge concern. Unless you're specifically talking about what you have to talk about in, like, some very fundamental philosopher, which takes a very long time to read.
Okay.
So
when I'm grounding my
don't care about
axioms, what am I doing exactly?
Well, and this is the second part. Okay. It's a pet peeve of mine, I guess, because it doesn't really make any sense to say axioms, okay? So, because axioms necessarily mean, like, an unjustified assertion. So, I would say I don't hold axioms because they're unjustified. And I don't have to appeal to axioms to be able to have a foundation. Of which I can
so you
rely
wouldn't
on.
make your arguments from the axioms, but you would maybe refer internally to axioms to, I guess, get started on an argument, maybe approach an argument.
You could, yeah, but I would say it's very rare for you to do so.
Okay. Okay, so what's an axiom?
Well, axiom is something that is unjustified, which you assert. So something like, you could say that a lot of people try and quote an axiom as like something like, I value happiness, and then they'll ask, well, why do you value happiness? And you go, well, it's just an axiom I have. There's really no answer to the reason why you hold that axiom over other things, right? So
grounding your axiom would be to justify those?
Yeah, which would then necessarily make them not axioms, because they would be justified then.
I gotcha. Okay.
So, depending on what you want to justify, because some things that you might consider axiomatic might not even be axioms, or might not even come under like the same radar as some other things. So, like, you value in something like ethically might have it's probably an easier line of reasoning than it is to like justify causality exists, for example. Like, these would be both something that you probably hold axiomatically if you haven't justified them previously, but you'd go about justifying them in very different ways.
Okay. Oh, well, so maybe it's not grounding axioms that I necessarily need. It's so like when somebody says that they're like a utilitarian or a materialist, like those like categories that people latch onto for approaching arguments, I guess, or deciphering reality. What are those called, and how many of them are there? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, what's that?
They would just beliefs someone holds. So like materialism would just be the belief that everything is physical. There's nothing like supernatural, for example.
Okay, what are the options there? If it's not material, what else is there? And how, like, what are the common ones that I guess people hold? Like, it's like materialist versus all these other different options that people could have, or then utilitarian versus all these other different options people could have.
Yeah, the materialism stuff is something I'm actually only like in the last few days looking into properly. I actually pulled a paper up before I went to bed, but I haven't read it yet. But there are a few options. When you talk about materialism, it usually is in the context of the philosophy of mind, and whether there is a separation between the brain and the mind, sorry. Which might be a belief you might hold, something you might not hold. A materialist would say that there isn't a separation between that, because what a person usually asserts as a mind is something that's like immaterial, and we can't interface with that sort of thing, so it's not real.
Okay, so like I think that the mind is completely physical, then I would be a materialist.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. That I don't think there's like any special like soul or supernatural being that is myself outside of my brain. Like I understand that if I like physically altered my brain in any kind of way, me as a person would change, or like my mind would change in some way. Yeah. Like what are other categories like this that I should establish for myself?
Yeah, so that would be a type of monism. So that there's only what they call substances, right? So there'd be like a mental substance and a physical substance. So a materialist would say there's no such thing as a, in quotes, mental substance, and there's only a physical one. That's why they're a single substance believer, a monist. But there are ideas of dualism, which is they hold to both, where you have a physical and a mental. So someone like Descartes, who aptly has a type of dualism named after him, Cartesian dualism, also known as like substance dualism, they would believe in a separation between that. There's substance dualism. People have tried to move away from like a monist and dualist like tags, because ever since Cartesian dualism got toppled like 300, 400 years ago.
Did he made a separation between mine and the physical world?
He appealed to God though, so
oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, that'll get you fucked.
So
okay.
And there's another guy that holds
to be fair, he didn't want to be a part of the Inquisition, right?
I don't know the history behind anything specifically like that, so I have no idea.
Okay.
But all I know is
that would make sense.
all I know is that he would say the connection is bridged by some supernatural being that we know as what he'd called God. There's another guy called Leibniz who believed the same sort of thing. He was a dualist as well, but instead of saying God bridges those gaps, he would say that God this is an interesting argument, that God, when making the universe, set these it's like the clockmaker argument, only there's two clocks, and he set these two clocks off at the same time. One that is the physical, one that is the mental, and they both go at the same time. They're both exactly the same clocks, so they have the same phenomenon of interaction between them, but it's something that's been going on since the beginning of ever, and that's why there is this connection between them, when in fact it's just an identical, like, of, I don't know, it's a very strange argument, but again, it appeals to God, that God set off these things. So you're not going to find, I think, many dualists who are going to be atheist or agnostic. So
okay, so typically if you're an atheist and you don't believe in the supernatural, or you feel no reason to believe in the supernatural, or you feel like if there is a supernatural you can't make any comments about it, you're a materialist.
Yeah, that's one of the like quickest like take-ups that an atheist will take, is materialism. Yeah. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm gonna like start listing, this is what I think I am, and then maybe I can like readdress them later. So I'm a materialist. Okay, when somebody says they're a utilitarian, what are they talking about? They're talking about ethics? Yes, it's an ethical theory on it's a type of consequentialism.
Okay.
So instead of just a normal base consequentialist would say, I weigh the outcomes of a decision and find out what's good, a utilitarian adds a little bit on the end and says, I like to maximize the happiness of these outcomes, and that's how I make moral decisions.
Utilitarian maximizes happiness. Do we have like an example of like this at work?
The trolley problem.
So okay, so if I looked at the trolley problem, right, and I decided not to pull the lever to kill the one person, right, instead of killing the five people, I would not be utilitarian in that case.
If you killed 1 over 5, you'd say that the amount of suffering is reduced when you kill one person. So the happiness is in like a contra example. There's more happiness to be gained from only killing one than there is to only kill 5.
Okay, so literally just happiness. Is happiness something to be valued? Is it maximizing kind of happiness or like maximizing like good?
The official word
experienced by people
would be well-being, which is a synonym for good,
okay.
Basically.
Okay. Yeah, I have like an issue with I think like being happy is good, but I don't think you should be happy all the time, or like it's necessarily something to value.
Yeah. So would you say that you'd be, let's say you'd be happy with $1 million, but
right,
let's say you had to go rob a bank to go do that. Do you think you'd be happy doing that?
No, I wouldn't.
Because everyone else misses out.
Yep. Yeah, that's one way to think. But like I sometimes like when I was dealing with Halsey last week, he cited some poll that like women aren't as happy as they used to be. And I don't feel like that matters, right? Because like he was making an argument that women were happier when they had less rights, right? They were happier when they were, housewives and just I don't know, broodmares and people who took care of children, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even if you say you're happier during that time, I don't necessarily like. For me, like I wouldn't want less choice just for happiness, right? Like I wouldn't mind being like a house husband, for instance, right? But I want the choice to not be a house husband, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like I don't think I want to be happy all the time. Like I want to not be happy sometimes. I want to feel uncomfortable. I want to feel like competitive. You know what I mean? Like I want to not necessarily be content and happy. I don't think that's like good for me. It's not necessarily like I kind of live for the moment where I'm struggling, and then I'm overcoming. Although maybe the overcoming would be the happiness, right? But I couldn't achieve that without the struggling.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
so
Halsey's argument when he brings up the poll, I didn't watch that specific bit because I had a panel I had to moderate, so I wasn't there for, I don't remember how long I was there, and I also don't know how long you went. So from the sound of it, I hope he didn't cite that as like a causal chain, that they are less happy because they had rights, because I think that would be very hard to argue if he did.
Yeah, no, he does make that was what he was trying to draw. He was trying to say we should like women shouldn't have rights because they're happier when they didn't. To be fair, like I think he during that entire thing he was just like entertaining. You can just tell he was just mad, and his ilk were just mad at women, and so like they didn't know how to actually deal with it, so they just like cite like random things like that.
I was reading his chat at the time. It was a bit it was a bit kind of like that.
Yeah,
I think I did say a few times that we should have never give women rights, like things like that. It was a bit okay.
Oh, cringe. Yeah, it's like oh.
So
okay, so if I don't think I was utilitarian, if I wouldn't pull the switch, what would I be? A consequentialist? Or no, that's the same thing, right?
Kind of.
Utilitarianism deals with consequentialists. Like I don't like. I guess like
utilitarian is a flavor of consequentialism.
Okay.
So there are other consequentialist theories that are not utilitarian. There are also other types of utilitarianism. Like there's a very nihilistic view of utilitarianism called negative utilitarianism. So instead of saying we maximize happiness or well-being. It's like minimize happiness.
Suffering? Oh,
suffering,
minimize
yeah.
happiness?
Oh, minimize suffering. Yeah,
happiness?
you're right there. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So that you would like basically, it's kind of an excuse to like not do as much.
Yeah, I don't. There's something that feels weird about, because I guess like if the choice, you can't help that a choice is being put in front of you. I understand that. Actually, can I say I really struggle with the trolley problem. Like I can see both sides, and I don't want to be the person who like decides somebody else should die. You know?
Well, interesting you'd say that, because Kant, who is a deontologist, would argue that interacting, even if you even like put your hand on the lever or even contemplated thinking about dealing with that scenario, that's unethical in and of itself. You shouldn't be engaging with that action at all, because that's not your responsibility. That's what Kant would say.
It's not my responsibility. How would I then separate myself from that then? Because you can't help what you think, right? Being that the mind is a product of the physical world, right?
Yeah, but there is no rational reason, he would say, to put your hand on the lever and try and decide that, because a strict law in deontology is that you can't use things as a means to an end, which would be like a primary principle in utilitarianism. So interacting with that scenario would make you inherently irrational doing that, because it's, well, against the principles of that ethics system.
So in like some weird situation where somebody has like, who wants me to deal with this, right? He like knocks me out, puts me in a room, I don't know, sets up some cameras, really like lets me know the trolley problem is now in front of me when I wake up. I couldn't, like in this case, like just engaging in that at all.
Engaging with that would be unethical.
Contemplating it. Okay. Oh shit. That's something to think about. Okay. So like, but like the decision not to engage with it, isn't that engaging with it?
It's a hard problem. I haven't read much about this specific issue. I know that this issue arises, but I haven't read much on it. That
okay.
Because it depends, right? That if you are able to evaluate that you're responsible for that scenario where you're put in the chair and you're put in front of it, and that if you're analyzing that as if I need to do something to stop people dying, then that would be a very utilitarian head of you. But if you said, I can't interact with this, this is unethical for me to interact with this, like your instinct almost portrays the ethics system you're about to use if you were going to do anything about it.
Okay. Oh shit. Okay. Yeah. I understand how. Oh Jesus Christ. Yeah, because like I wouldn't want to pull the lever, and I guess I would still think about it, but in that case I would be engaging in this, right? So what if somebody who actually, what if somebody actually engages in this, right, and decides not to pull the lever? What would they be in that case?
Well, they wouldn't be a utilitarian, at least. They wouldn't weigh the positives and negatives
overall,
like that.
Okay, overall well-being. Okay. What if it's like a whole bunch of like, say you have like 5 90-year-olds who only had like a couple years left on their life, most likely, and then like a child who's like 10 years old and has like 80 years at least in front of them, right? Is it like, do you measure it by time at all? Does time like that, like you know what I said? Like, how do you measure well-being?
Well, measuring well-being, I would almost, well, there's two things I could say to that. I could say, one, measuring well-being, that concept of measuring well-being is inherently a utilitarian thing, of which you'd have to do.
Okay.
And two, being able to do it it basically, like, it seems like a cop-out answer, but you've got to kind of deal with that. Because, well, I would say that you have to, like, deal with it in a way. Because even though I would say I'm like a realist, that morals are real, I wouldn't say that they're objective. I don't think there are correct moral statements. I think there are true moral statements, but I don't think there are correct and incorrect moral statements.
They're true, but not necessarily correct or incorrect. Could you like elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I would say that, so the trolley problem example, in the context of utilitarianism, it is true that killing one person is the right answer because of the system that you use. And it is true for a deontologist to not engage with that because he is a deontologist. But it doesn't mean that I would necessarily be giving a value judgment, which almost betrays my ethics system to say that what is correct and incorrect, almost.
Yeah.
I haven't solved that problem myself, so... but...
it doesn't seem like a problem you should be comfortable, like, I've solved it. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so philosophy is just like telling me that really it can be anything. Like, as like grounded as you feel you are, you're not.
Yeah, kind of. It's not a very satisfying answer, but it is kind of true.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I am a utilitarian, but I don't necessarily know if I'd pull the switch, but I think if I identified that situation quickly, I would separate myself from it as best as I could, because I don't think there's anything ethical about engaging in that. I do think that's like pretty real, and I think I understand it. Okay, so if
it's interesting because when I had seen like a Vsauce video on this, where they kind of simulate people having to deal with the trolley problem, but it's not. They've like cleverly edited some footage that could run over 4 people or 1, and it's on the track for 4 people, and they have to press a button to switch the tracks. And most often than not, they don't engage with it. They don't touch the button. They think about it, but they move away. They just kind of freeze and don't do anything.
Oh wow! Well, I'm not that.
It's very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's like one thing to say to like identify the well-being in this case, and think like, yeah, I would make like from like an objective standpoint, I'd make this decision. But when you're actually put in the situation where it could be a real thing,
it's a little different.
You don't want to be, you don't want to be the judge, right? Of like live, but like not judging is the same as a judgment, right? I don't know. Okay, so I think I'm a utilitarian deontologist. Is that right? And you were just getting into morals. So you're saying, like, what's a moral that could be true, but not necessarily correct, or something that's correct but not necessarily true? So
something that if you agree to a moral system, one of the ones we've just described, something that coheres with that system would be true. So something like, a good analogy would be something like a theory in science cohering to other scientific laws, making that law true. But what, making that theory true, sorry.
Yeah, so I don't seem to be able to learn unless I like have examples. I don't know what it is with me. All right, go ahead.
So something like, let's pick one. So something like, maybe I could say that. My instinct is to say something like evolution, as long as it doesn't because it doesn't. Let's say it doesn't. Well, it doesn't try to prove non-life comes. Life comes from non-life. That's not what evolution is. So that wouldn't break the laws of thermodynamics. That something can't come from nothing. So that would still be true in the context of science because it doesn't break any of the scientific laws.
Okay.
Just like The trolley problem, if you're a utilitarian, it would be true that one is the correct answer, because it coheres to maximizing well-being in that situation.
Okay. I think I understand. Okay. What are like what other things do you think I need to establish? So if I think I'm a utilitarian but a deontologist at the same time, those do. You said this earlier, right? Those two go together, or not really?
Well, no, I don't think so at all. I think, well, deontology kind of has a principle that doing things as a means to an end is kind of a bad thing to do, which is basically what consequentialism is. It basically just rules out a deontologist being consequentialist, basically.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm just making some notes for myself. Maybe I shouldn't have had this imperial stout. Okay, so let's forget about that for now. Let's say I'm a utilitarian, I'm a materialist. What else? What other categories should I be looking for? Because I don't want to just match every like person. You know, that seems pretty standard for like the non-religious person. Or maybe I'm just so grounded that I have the most boring, most obvious answers to the universe, you know, and I can't help it.
I don't know what else really. It's really hard because there is some philosophy involved in like political conversation, but there isn't much. I think like ethics is obviously the massive one. Find out how you find what good and bad is very important. But apart from that,
okay,
determinism might be one you could have to think about because of things like, I'm sure you've seen like the old Sargon Destiny conversation with who was it? Black people just need to get married.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
That was that was a very free will based argument that they can just do that. Like it's on their own like accord to be able to just pull themselves out of poverty, things like that. When I guess philosophically, that's not really true. Well, depending on who you ask, I guess that the things kind of the environment is probably like more important than you doing something on your own. I guess that some things around your environment are going to help you make decisions, no matter if they're right or wrong. That if a gun being in your vicinity, if there's a gun in your vicinity, you're more likely to shoot a gun in your lifetime if there isn't one there. Like as a basic example, right? That would be a type of determinism. But there are, it's almost as like, and I don't know what like philosophy this really comes under, I guess. But there is like a big sliding scale for that sort of thing. So it'd be like the three base positions in, again, I don't know the name for that. But it would be like free will on like the left, compatibilism in the middle, and determinism on the right. So you can have like a sliding spectrum where the middle one kind of incorporates a bit of both sides, and then the sides obviously completely reject the other side.
Wait, so determinism's in the middle, right?
No, determinism's on one of the sides.
Oh, on the right, and free will's on the other?
Yeah, and then compatibilism would be in the middle.
And you're saying like on the left there's determinism?
I don't mean like the political left. I just mean
okay.
I just mean on like as like a spectrum. I mean like a bar, right? That you can be anywhere really along this spectrum of things, but there's kind of like an established one side, and then a middle that is usually understood.
Okay, this is actually something I want to talk about, like free will versus determinism. So if you're a determinist, you just feel like everything happens because it was going to happen in the first place, right? You didn't actually have a choice there. You just had like the illusion of choice.
Yeah, there's no such thing as choice. It's like a big tagline. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like free will is like everything's in the moment. There's no, they could have gone either way. Like choice, I guess, is
anything
a real
is
thing.
Possible is like is another tagline for that.
Yeah. Okay. How does compatibilism fit into this?
So,
Like what would a compatibilist? Oh, geez, why can't I say this word? A compatibilismist. A
a
compatibilist.
compatibilist.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
compatibilist. Yeah.
A
Like,
compatibilist would say that it's a bit of both. So they recognize things like your environment influences your decision, but they could say things like, well, ultimately, even though your environment's around you, that you're still the ultimate arbiter of what you do. You still decide to do things, but it's not as strong as a free will would be. It's not like completely everything's on the cards, ready to be changed at any time ever. So there is some sort of like regularity to things happening, but you still ultimately decide what you want to do.
Right. So there's like there's like when determining someone's hold on. I'm getting some dessert. My wife just brought me something. Is this pudding? Does it look familiar? I don't know what this is. It smells good though. Okay, so if you think that like people are the product of their environments for the most part, oh no, something like genetics versus environment, or is that both still determinism?
That is an axis that someone could use to decide which side they lie on. Yeah.
Oh god, good.
But there are people, I guess. Well, yeah. So probably some. I don't know. Well, from my experience of watching Sargon, someone like Sargon would probably be like, it's very in your genes and very free will still. I don't think he's religious. I don't know if that's true or not, but he would still say he has like a lot of choice in the things he does.
Okay. So how do you go about like what is like the Sam Harris take? I think Sam Harris is I know that. Sorry, like I like Sam Harris. I obviously don't like his bad takes, but for the most I don't necessarily appreciate him as a philosopher, right? I like him as a person and the way he approaches arguments. But like I know it was a disaster his dabbling in philosophy. But I do know his basic stance is like free will doesn't exist, but it's like useless to even make that distinction. Like you operate on the fact that you have a free will in the first place, right?
That would be
is that his argument? That would be compatibilism. Okay.
So there's like you kind of still act as if you do so, but it's kind of unrealistic to try and justify it, I guess is a good way to put what he's just said. Yeah.
Now, would that be utilitarian in that case to approach it that way?
No, I don't think that.
Or do you think that's just like a
relation.
cop out to kind of approach it that way? It feels like it's either it feels like a cop out kind of, right?
You wouldn't be using a system of ethics to make this decision. You'd be using a system of epistemology to make this decision. So like beliefs of other things.
Wait, sorry, like my term, epistemology is just knowledge, right?
It's known as the study of knowledge, but knowledge is one of like a few fields in epistemology. It's like my favorite field, epistemology. It's where most of the grappling of like things like axioms are. All
right, I'm like,
yeah,
I'm taking some notes. All right, what are popular moral systems? Like maybe when I took my ethics in college, that was probably one or like my favorite class. Ethics was really good because I'm like, oh, how do I make like moral decisions? And there was this system at the time, which thinking about it now, I don't think I agree with it, but like any kind of moral argument to determine if that's good or bad, right? Is like The deciding factor is, would it be okay if everyone acted this way, right? Would everybody engaged in this? Is that like Kantian ethics? I forgot what it is. Does that sound familiar, or was this just something I latched onto that nobody? Okay.
That's kind of like a generally accepted thing in ethics, unless explicitly said otherwise.
So like I had made this as my like, oh look, I'm a philosopher. I'm a philosopher now because I took an ethics class. Like I used to make an argument with people that it was immoral to ride bicycles around campus, but it's not. I didn't realize at the time like that's not a moral argument at all. I think at least, because if everybody rode bicycles around campus, it would be a shit show, right? Like nobody would be able to get anywhere. There'd be like death and destruction going on all the time. All kinds of problems would arise from that, right? But I thought I was like being a 5-head at the time.
It's unethical for everyone to ride a bike. Let me think.
At least in like I was being very specific here, like on campus.
Yeah.
There are people who have bikes, right? And they're sometimes clashing with pedestrians, but for the most part, like there's no issue. And like people have bikes, they're fine. But like in this situation, when you look at all the pedestrians, you're like, well, what if all of them had bikes? Like, holy shit! Like this would be fucking chaos. But that's not a moral argument, right? Or is it?
Yeah, that's true.
A moral argument?
It's a descriptive argument, so it's necessarily not moral. So yeah.
Wait, so how would I make that? How would I make that distinction?
You could say that people. Well, you made a claim there that everyone riding a bike on a college campus would be like chaos.
Right.
That would be like a descriptive claim. Like that you're describing what would happen if that was to happen, right? So you could say from that if you don't think chaos is good, you could say that everyone ought not to ride bikes.
Everyone, but it would be okay if some people rode it at certain times, or would the argument would be like a percentage, right?
Yeah, it's probably. I would say that it's true that everyone ought not to ride bikes, but that doesn't mean no one should ride bikes.
Oh, like this is my problem. So if you're like talking to an individual, right, and they're deciding if they should ride a bike on campus or if they shouldn't, I guess they're like, it would be like, well, how many people are riding a bike right now? Like that would just be a question that would be enter into that conversation to like determine if you should or should not ride a bike.
That'd be a point of which you would use to weigh the pros and cons. Yeah.
Okay, so like my initial take, you'd probably call that reductionist, right?
Oh, the first example, like it's immoral to everyone to ride a bike. Maybe reductionist.
Yeah, I get confused with being a reductionist all the time, so I want to make sure I'm like able to identify this in the future.
I was very reductionist, but I don't know if I'd ever make a statement. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything necessarily bad being a reductionist anyway.
Yeah, so like just because I can like reduce an argument into like smaller parts, that if I address one of the smaller parts doesn't necessarily mean I'm ignoring the other parts, right? Like I can take each part by itself. That's me as like a programmer. Like that's like we have different ways to approach programming. Like I'm an object-oriented programmer instead of like a procedural. So like I think of like everything in like its smallest possible useful form, right? And so like I think I approach arguments that way. Okay, so what are like some popular ethical systems? Like do people adhere to like singular ethical systems?
Oh no, the academic consensus is not decided on what moral system to use yet.
Oh no, I mean like people in general. Do they have like one ethical system, or do they switch between?
Some people.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting because. So I remember the crash course philosophy thing before was talking about contractarianism. That would be a type of deontology. That you could use, but There's a well, it was like a 2-minute conversation I had with Relly that I thought of this thing beforehand that a lot of people in like on the left anyway on Twitch like to use that social contract argument to make arguments, and I think it's pretty valid. It's a good way to be able to distinguish. Well, it's a good argument method, but it's necessarily like a deontological system, and a lot of people ascribe to utilitarianism.
Yeah.
So isn't there a bit of a conflict?
How does that do with the how does that deal with the social contract? Can you give me an example of like a social contract that like Twitch streamers engage in?
I think I would say, especially, I think everyone would say that it's a social contract. Would you say that like I wouldn't rob you, so you shouldn't rob me, sort of thing, anything like that?
So
would
like
be
engaging
a contract
like
argument.
a herd mentality.
Yeah, but I thought it was a problem that other people had, that using that was a bit contradictory with the other moral position that they've stated, because it seems pretty counterintuitive to each other. I asked Rella specifically about it, and he says, well, he uses it as one like smaller point in his bigger ethics system of utilitarianism. So he thinks that a social contract maximizes well-being, and I couldn't see a problem with that. And I thought about it a little bit beforehand. I think I agreed with him. I don't see a problem with that personally. That you could say that a social contract between people maximizes the well-being for everyone else. I can't see an argument against that. But it wouldn't be the theory of social contract. It'd be a social contract, like in its, I guess, simplest form, as like almost like a non-existent piece of paper that you could sign, like verbally, rather than like a whole ethics system. So, but it could achieve the same ends.
Okay, so wouldn't something like a social contract though, like encourage groupthink, like sort of push against people, like going against the grain and like making breakthroughs, if that makes sense? I'm not sure if you understand what I'm trying to get to. Maybe I need to like explain.
Yeah, I would say that. I think I would say you're right. That's where we would back up to the overarching ethics, like system. So, if the contract comes to bad conclusions, then you would appeal to the ethics system that you use to make the decision on social contract. So, fundamentally, if we have a problem with a contract that then says like two different things that are contradictory to each other, the easiest way to solve that would be, well, does it maximize well-being? And then if yes, do it. If not, don't do it. Because you'd be using the contract to a means to an end. But if it can't do that, and it would be contradictory, then you could go back and then seeing what the primary principle of means to an end would solve this problem that we have.
Okay.
It would still be consistent.
Okay, so when I approach maybe policy argument, I kind of like, it's sure, like I can like talk about like individuals, like it's really shitty that this person or that person like doesn't have health care, and I think that like in some points I'm like, if I were in their shoes and I was born, right, especially if I'm a determinist, like I would at least want a system in place to take care of me, to like deal with these things that I didn't really have a choice in, like say like growing up in poverty or not getting a good education, things like that. Like I'd at least want to have like my healthcare taken care of. Like we should at least do our best for that, which doesn't seem to actually be like a good argument to like, because yeah, I can talk to an individual and put myself in their shoes, and that's how like I guess I make a lot of my moral decisions or come to conclusions on issues. But I think from like I can say that maybe that's like in the front of my brain, but like thinking about most things like policy, like I think everybody should have healthcare because I want them to have just a society, for instance, would be better if people didn't have this potential financial boot on their neck, right? Like it would be nice to have that situation. So if I fell into disrepair, right? If I was a victim of something that was going to happen to me anyways, would like this to be in place to take care of me, take care of my family, things like that. So not necessarily on the individual or really like empathizing with them in that kind of way. Is there like a way for me to decipher thoughts like that? Like, can I hold both of those positions? Like, am I being dishonest with the first one? Because I think like at the core,
I think the
it's
first
the
position
latter.
is an extension of the second. I think you saying that I want healthcare for everyone because it appeals to the ethics system I use. Well, it maximizes well-being. And then you saying that I wouldn't want to be in a position without that. It's just an extension of the argument that you just made. It's very consistent with what you just said.
Okay, so what if I'm at the conclusion that that wouldn't be something necessarily that would be a problem for me because I don't know, like I'm set up for life, like I'm a Bitcoin millionaire or something.
You go back to the ethics system. So if you were a Bitcoin millionaire and you were we were talking about free healthcare, and then you went, well, I don't need it because I can pay for my own private healthcare. Okay, cool. What about everyone else? And then
right, and like
necessarily
I want to be in a
back to the
situation.
ethics.
Right, it's the same thing with like welfare. Like, yeah, I think people should we should like take care of people because we could be in that situation at the same point. But like, I think at my core, like I'm just like, I want people to have welfare and have like the basics so they don't like resort to like stealing and like being desperate in our society, because that's a negative on me. That, you know what I mean? That seems like, is that what like egoism is? Like I'm just concerned with how the world could possibly affect me.
If that, well, okay. So when I said earlier that things being good for everyone is kind of an implicit given until stated otherwise, egoism is one of those systems which states otherwise, that everyone else really doesn't matter. It's kind of the person that believes they're an egoist. So an egoist would say that I'm the most important, and things are good if they appeal to me rather than everyone else. That'd be a type of consequentialism. But instead of maximizing happiness for everyone, it's just maximizing happiness for you.
Yeah, but
I think that leads
what
to
if
a
maximizing
ton of
happiness
bad
for the person involves maximizing happiness for everyone?
That
You
is
see what I'm saying?
an argument that has been used. That's an argument that you can use in egoism, but I think egoism has a massive problem. In general.
Oh, okay, let's hear it. Because I feel like I'm an egoist, but maybe I'm not.
So maybe I can ask you, why do you think you should be an egoist?
I feel like since this is the only thing I really have control over is myself, right? Or something that I can like truly know. Like I know maybe my intentions or whatever, and like my actual needs. That like if I'm concerned mostly with my own well-being, like a fully thought out well-being, like going into the future, like I can derive different arguments as to why my herd, like the human race, I guess, or like American society is like, I can make arguments for like why I want everybody to get some sort of treatment, right? Like it's one thing to say like, oh, I'm an egoist, so I don't really care about other people, but like not caring about other people like has consequences on my own life, right? So like that's I guess where I'm sort of coming from in this case. That like if I derived like, I just feel like my maximized happiness involves other people achieving happiness.
Okay. You kind of said it. My problem with it, I guess, is that the reason why I would say that an ethics system has to be consistent with everyone else taking part in an action or whatnot. So what we said earlier is that if you focus in on one person or a group of people, it gets really vacuous very quickly. So especially when, like you said, that you could say, for me to be happy as an egoist, I think everyone else should be happy, which is valid. But there's nothing to stop another egoist saying, I want to be happy, and because of that, I want everyone to die, and I find that the best, right? It seems like there's no consistent position of egoism, especially when to make it a consistent, literally the word consistent basically begs, especially ethical consistency, kind of begs everybody else. That principle that we've just appealed to, that egoism doesn't hold to, it explicitly says otherwise. So egoism can't be consistent. It's explicitly not consistent with everyone else. That is the problem with it.
I never thought of it that way. No, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, how do I deal with the person who doesn't have the same sort of, I guess, ego that I have, right?
Yeah, you can call it that.
who like doesn't agree with me, I guess, on I guess consequences or things that they need to happen or would prefer to happen, since morals are subjective, right?
Yeah. The very unique scenario for an egoist is that two egoists meeting each other doesn't necessarily mean agreement, but two utilitarians meeting each other, or deontologists or contractarians, they would necessarily already be consistent with each other, even if they come to subjective conclusions, which is it's very hard to explain that, but if they come from as the same foundation, then especially 99% of the time they're already going to agree on most things.
Yeah. Oh shit. Okay.
I don't think that's ever the case unless your environments are the same. I don't think that's much the case of egoists. Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing, it also leads to being an anarcho-capitalist. So.
Right.
Like the fundamental ethics of an ANCAP is egoism. Like, forget who was it, but
sort of like an Ayn Rand thing. Everybody just needs to look out for themselves.
Yeah, that she's an egoist and an ANCAP because of that.
Yeah.
So is like Last Username and other people.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I at least have something with this. Like, I have some arguments in general that I think I could make, but I don't know how to like approach them from a philosophical angle. Maybe I can do it a little better this time. So like, well, I guess abortion is like a really big one, right? And I know. So like, I actually have two arguments that I want to be able to flush out a little better. Maybe you can give me some feedback. So like, I don't want to have an abortion argument, except like maybe with another guy who just like is somebody like Halsey. I guess I could have the abortion debate with. But for the most part, I think due to evolutionary processes, like, and our biology in general, have led us to a pretty shitty reproductive system. People are driven to have sex and engage in sex without necessarily wanting the consequences, right? But like because like for me, like I guess the mind is physical and our urges are like physical, that things like getting pregnant are inevitable, right? But so I feel like I should be able to make an argument for like how shitty our reproductive system is in general, based on something like that. Sort of like I heard there's the argument about like, was it the violinist? Like you're knocked out, and then like you have like some violinist with some rare disease that needs to share your blood for a bit, and you had like no choice in the matter. And I actually think that's a pretty good argument. I think Destiny came up with a counter, right? That like you knew beforehand, like that you knew beforehand, right? That you could end up in this situation, even if it's like a 1%, 2% chance. You went into this fun house to have fun, but like, 1 in 100 people could come out like this. Like, could you really argue? Could you really, I guess, like come up with an opposition when you were that one person? And for me, I feel fuck this for me thing. If I ever say for me, don't make sure, because I hate shit like that. But when I thought about that argument, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, but it doesn't take into account that like having sex in general isn't like simply like entertainment, right? Because like when you think about it from an objective standpoint, like just having sex doesn't seem to be something people would want to do unless like we were like had an evolutionary like genetically coded, I don't want to say biological imperative, but like it's something like that, right? Like this is something we all need to sleep, we all need to eat, and we all need to fuck, right? This is something we almost all of us need, right? I guess some people might be in denial or might have like a much lower sex drive. Mm-hmm. But that's not the same as entertainment, right? Because I could have gone somewhere else for entertainment, right? I could have went to a movie theater, or I could have found some other thing to do, if that makes sense. Or would that even go further down that same line, though?
Well, I would say, do you need to sleep, or do you want to sleep? Do you need to eat or want to eat?
I need to at least eat at a minimum, right?
To
like there's probably eating I engage in that's over the top that I don't need.
Well, yeah, but like, let's say you're a person that ate to live. Do you need to eat or want to eat?
Sorry, if you're a person who what?
If you're a person that eats to like stay alive, for example, right?
Right. So you eat because you need to eat, right?
Do you want to eat or do you need to eat?
You need to eat in this case, yeah.
To do what?
Wait. Oh God, are you taking me down one of these rabbit holes? Okay, so let's say
I can tell you if you want me to.
Yeah,
what I'm trying. Okay, so what I'm trying
unless
to
you're
get
having
at,
fun with me grappling with these concepts, but yeah.
What I'm trying to get at is that there's very specific difference between a need and a want, and I'm sure you know what the differences are, but very simply that like something that you want to do is not usually like, it can be justified, it might not be justified, realistically it doesn't really matter if it's justified most of the time. But there's some things that you need to do that I would say that basically need to be justified. I don't think you can do something that you need to do without be justified. So I would need to do something to want to do something else, was what I was trying to get at. So if you want to live, then you need to eat and sleep and these other things. But if you need to make a pizza, you're gonna need dough.
Right.
Think these sort of things. It depends how far that goes down, right? And it usually gets to some ethics or values. So if you want to eat lots of food over a smaller amount of food, it's usually because you want to, but what does that food do to you? Well, it's usually because it makes me happy and I like eating these types of foods over others and things like that. I would say that these are all ethical decisions, right? And I guess obviously with your abortion thing,
I feel like there should be a way, or there is a way to introduce the fact that we have like a shitty reproductive system into this argument, but I don't know how to introduce it into the argument, if that makes sense.
That'd be one of the things you weigh, right? It's just the reproductive system. You engage in the action of reproduction, or well, the action that might cause reproduction, sorry,
is a product of a shitty reproductive system.
Well, you saying it's a shitty reproductive system, for example, would be one of the things that you'd have to weigh as a pro or con, right? Oh. Just like you so go into a bad restaurant.
We have no choice in these things, right? I guess this would be more of a determinist route.
Kinda. Determinism gets ultra complicated in relation to ethics. I try and not talk about them in tandem because, for myself, I guess, I used to be very anti-real about morals, and I used to make a very core determinist argument for why ethics didn't exist. at all, because we had no such thing as choice. I would be what they called a hard determinist. I was like far as determinist as you could go. So I would argue that I would have argued that there aren't anything such as ethics. Making an ethical decision is just the illusion of choice sort of thing again.
Right.
That things just happen and I have no control over it. But then if I wanted to talk politics, I'd have to basically drop this like hard determinism stance and assume something I don't believe in to then say, is it okay to implement a policy? It was a very strange system that I basically investigated philosophy myself and then didn't use any of it. It was I'm very critical of my previous self, like 6 months ago, like 6 or 7 months ago of that, because I guess anyone does it really. If you look back at yourself, especially in like
definitely.
Political
How old are you, by
you're
the way?
pretty cringy. I'm 20.
Jesus Christ. Oh my, you haven't even hit the, like, oh shit. Like, I didn't feel like I was an actual, like, I don't identify myself as like an adult or like a person until I was like 27. I'm like, when I look back at like cause like all the way up until 27, like every year was like a different version of myself, like figuring things out. As soon as I hit 27, that's why I kind of get the whole, like, your brain doesn't stop developing or like goes through all of its major changes up until like you're 25, 26, 27. Like, that makes sense to me, because like I feel like I'm the same person I was when I was 27. Like I'm 36 right now, but like when I'm 20-year-old compared to me, holy shit, that's a different person completely.
Yeah, I only started doing like philosophy like 2 or 3 years ago, and then politics was like 1 or 2 years ago. So this is, I guess, quite recent. Well, I guess there's not much of my life, I guess, in comparison, maybe, but I don't know. But yeah, I guess a year ago I'd be very critical. I'm very critical of my old self, and I've still got some like beliefs that I'm still going over, I guess, like the materialism stuff that I've only just looked over. I don't know if I'm a materialist. I'm very in flux with a lot of things. I'm very cautious to like brand myself anything at the moment, because it can be
that makes sense.
very dangerous.
Yeah.
So
okay, so like going this, because I feel like the abortion argument is just something that I could have, that I feel like I have arguments for that I never see addressed, and that could just be because they're bad arguments.
yeah,
Somebody in chat says, I'm going to try to find local fruits and veggies tomorrow. Sustainability, GMO free grown. Okay. John Zook.
nice.
It's pretty good. I actually have my avocado tree. I'm hoping to get some actual fruit this year. One of my avocado trees died. That's only because I didn't care for it properly.
Damn.
But also my lemon trees too. Yeah. Okay, so going back to the abortion argument. So, sorry. What were you trying to get at? Let me make sure I actually like leave with something here.
I think that the subjective nature of morals fundamentally comes down to these sorts of values, these like needs and wants, like trains. If you want to be happy, abortion might be good or bad. It's very difficult, and because a lot of people could not value being happy, it's not obviously very conventional for people to do so, but that'd be some, like, I guess, like an axiom of like debate or conversation, is that most people like to be happy. I don't think that's disputed a lot, and I think it's very essential to have any of these conversations, like political ones, at all. So if we're talking abortion in like that sort of realm, I'm not fully decided on abortion. I don't think this is a belief that I would say I hold, is that I don't have a conclusive answer on abortion at all, because it's very difficult to then it's to say either way. If we went into specific cases of abortions that happened, I could probably brand some of those as like good or bad based on my system, but I could never overarchingly say, and this is a problem with, I think, a lot of ethical questions in general, is that saying a whole branch of something like abortion, that whole topic, which you can have so many different types of abortions, is very difficult to say, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-choice. Either of them. It's very difficult to say. Because you're basically saying either every single type of abortion is okay, or no types of abortion are okay. And I'm sure
so, like,
there's a lot of people that have a lot of nuance that then try and brand themselves with one of these things. It's quite difficult, and it's not very accurate to what they believe.
Yeah, like I think like the first few months, like obviously there's no issue there. At least from I'm gonna go into that a bit more, but like it seems like if a fetus can survive on its own outside of the womb, and the woman can give birth without any complications or any risk to their health, that is an abortion shouldn't occur there, right? Like that's actually committing some kind of a crime. But at the same time, like the baby isn't or the fetus isn't conscious in any kind of way, right? I think like it's like I think I'm like pro-choice until like a situation like that. But,
yeah, see the caveats you have to add.
But then I'm not pro-choice anymore, right? Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen like the incest conversations, right? That's a classic example. I think where I realized that you can never say this massive overarching topic is good or bad. Like that's a very easy one to say that incest is good or bad. Well, what about this and this and this and this and this and this? Well, okay, I agree. Oh, well then you're not against it or for it completely, are you? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, and like I'm gonna take like one more. Like, let me. So when I mean, I've never actually had an abortion debate except for like with conservative friends locally. Because like conservatives, right, and Republicans in general make the argument that like they have a hard line. They're very proud of their hard lines, right? Like conception. That's when life starts, right? That's when the soul is created. Or, I mean, they won't say soul, but they have like that sort of understanding, right? Yeah. And I feel like this idea, like that's easily combated by the fact that like something like 30-ish% of conceptions occur and are miscarried without the woman even know she was pregnant for a moment. Like, like how would I like enter into an argument with that? I guess the fact is I'm just trying to combat like a non-cohesive argument in the first place, right?
Kind of. That's a good way to put it.
Because like there's nothing logical about like they're just established. Like they're always like, this is my line, right? Like this is when life begins. Like, but the way they always phrase it is always like, it's just like being subjective, right? Because they give no moral weight to eggs or sperm at all. But as soon as they're combined, like that's like something magical, right?
Yeah. It depends. Well, I'm sure everyone does say that, the key question with abortion is when you define a life. I don't know if I even agree with that summary. Because it depends. It does depend on how you define a person. What personhood is.
Yeah. All right, guys.
I think I'm a lot.
Hold on. Pause 1 second.
Sorry. Poggies.
Yeah, that's when I'm coming back. Okay. All right. So, sorry to like interview that.
Discord is ultra laggy.
Oh yeah. Recently, I think you were coming through okay before.
It's just done it. I think it's just gone up.
Okay. Maybe.
Oh, back in the green. Something happened. Hello.
Disconnect. Yeah, we can like disconnect and come back in.
I can hear you fine now.
Okay, great. Yeah. You sound good too.
Okay. Yeah, personhood. I think I would define the line a lot later than most people. Like, I don't think... Oh, I don't even know where my line is, even if there is a line. That's another thing, I don't even know if the... Ethics conversations are not easy. I guess it's the simple grasp from this. But I think the way that I would define life and how I would answer the abortion question, in whatever sense that means, is you're able to... Wait, sorry, I would say a person is when you're able to make like a rational decision.
Okay. Well, doesn't that
mean
start
a lot
going
later.
like... Yeah. Like, after they're born?
Yeah, I would say so.
Don't we have people in existence right now who just are not capable of making rational decisions?
Yeah, I would... It does sound strange, and I don't know if I'm rock solid on it yet, but I think
Jesus.
Okay, I don't know. I know I've just not thought about this properly yet. This like new take, because I've already like thought of like several problems to my own scenario. So
yeah, this is what's good about like having discussion and like verbalizing your thoughts. Like already, like when I've come to you with a few things now, as soon as I like said it out loud, I'm like, oh, this is why this wouldn't necessarily work. But yeah.
I was going to say that I would almost treat, not like predatorily, but I would almost treat like children until a certain age like pets.
Oh, true.
So that you would have them around because they usually bring happiness to the people that or gave birth to them, or I guess adopted them or whatnot, whatever scenario you might have a child at. And then wherever the line is, which I again don't know what that is, and when they start making rational decisions on their own, whatever that means. So like if they're able to make statements where they decide things on their own, basically, I guess is when you start becoming someone rather than like something, I guess, in like the meanest sense. The instant problems that I was already thinking of was things like people that will never have that sort of capacity. Does that mean you're allowed to do like whatever you want to them? Because it's not unethical to do that to someone that isn't a person then, which is a big problem, I guess. There was that one. There is what was the other one I just thought of? Yeah, there's other people that will never come to that. And does that make like treating people before they become in quotes a person, or like anything that you would call bad to like a fully grown person, okay, right, because they're not a person, because well, they're not a person.
Yeah. No,
it's not an easy answer.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm just thinking about the arguments in general. Like a conservative would also be like, I guess that's like God's will or whatever. Like, okay, just because I'm trying to think of like, because my whole like women miscarry without even realizing it all the time. The argument would be like, well, that was just how it would. I'm guessing there would just be a determinist. Rarest Pepper asks, who's the most attractive member of BTF? I mean, I can tell you, Rarest Pepper, and you're not going to like the answer. But, okay, I'll answer your question in a second. As soon as I finish my thought, Rarest Pepper. I'm already overheating over here in my brain. So, as far as... So, they're going to say something like, that's like... to leave it up to chance or leave it up to nature, and that's usually assuming that like that people are outside of nature, right? And so like if a woman accidentally drinks like say too much orange juice, right, and like if you have like too much vitamin C, it can cause a miscarriage, right? And it happens in the first month. No one's concerned about that, right? like nobody thinks that the woman has done anything wrong. Nobody values that
It
life
wasn't
that had been created and
predatory.
conceived. Right. But like, is that important in this case? Being predatory?
Um.
Wait,
Well,
but
if you call
I
it
just
an
thought about that
accident,
too.
yeah.
It's like, yeah. But like, what's the difference between that and just having like nature naturally? Maybe this is something like the whole predatory angle. You can explain to me a little bit better. So like, I don't feel like there's a difference, right? In this case, if a woman accidentally drinks too much orange juice, right, or has too much like multivitamin pills, and a woman who understands that she might be pregnant, there's a good chance she's pregnant, or maybe she didn't realize she is pregnant, and like, you know what? Let me chug this thing of Tropicana orange juice, extra pulp, and like, she has her period the next time, right? Like, I don't see the difference there. Like, what am I not taking into account? Is the whole predatory angle? There's no like
Yeah, I think that.
malcontent there.
I don't think either of them are predatory. It's just that the amount of information needed to, within context of an ethics system, to be able to make that decision is different, obviously. So one knows that they're pregnant, but doesn't know that the orange too much. They don't know how much orange juice will, tip them over the line of doing something bad, and the other person doesn't think that they're even pregnant.
Yeah. But as like, I
Information
guess
like
a
that
consequentialist, a
is.
utilitarian, it doesn't matter, right? Or
Ooh. Um. Does it matter? That's a question I've not heard before. So, as like an analogy, if I knew I had a gun, but I prepared it with no bullets in the magazine, and then I've put that gun somewhere and then re-picked it up and there are bullets in there, but I'm unaware, and I've, playfully, wafted it around and said, oh, I'll shoot you, and then I shoot it, pull the trigger, and it actually kills someone, am I a murderer? And I don't know. I don't think I can answer that question.
doesn't seem that way. Yeah, it doesn't feel, but you're also acting recklessly, right?
That is true,
Because you're
but
underneath the
I was under the
assumption
assumption that, yeah, that I didn't have any bullets in the mag, yeah. It's weird, because I guess there's two ways to evaluate situations ethically. There is like a character evaluation, so whether you did something wrong, or the act evaluation, so whether something bad happened. So I can say that the gun, both of those, like the orange juice and the gun one, something bad happened, but I don't think that makes the person bad.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, but like if they knowingly shot it with bullets in it, then that would be bad, right?
It'd be a different case. It's bad and the person is bad, I guess, for doing that, yeah.
But yeah, I guess you'd also have to come to the agreement that the results are bad.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, so that actually doesn't stand up.
I feel
like this is like a product. Yeah, I feel like this is a product of our shitty reproductive system. That's like part of my like overarching argument towards abortion. Like, yeah, like fucking, we're getting pregnant all the time. We don't even know it. Like what's the difference between like just simulating our, like acting naturally, I guess, towards our own reproductive system versus like leaving it up to chance, I guess, or to nature. I don't know.
I guess this is a good argument for researching, getting more information on a subject in general.
Yeah.
Is that you not knowing something could, and then doing something without that information can be very detrimental.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay, I think my brain is overloaded. But sorry, you want to give me some things to think about?
I'll give you a final thing. There was an example that I once heard. It's a bit like sexual, I guess. It is a bit weird, but it's 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 a hypothetical. I don't think this has ever happened ever, and I think it's okay. But there was there was an example of, if I can remember it right, there was a guy who I don't even know how to word it. I know what the example is, but I just so there's okay, if I remember right, there is a guy who wants to have sex with someone, basically.
Okay.
And he would go about that. He would want to. He would result in raping someone to do it, basically, right? This person would want to go out and find someone, but then it comes across this other person. This other person, a female, wants to have intercourse with whoever is around, right? No matter what the circumstances, they just want to have intercourse with the next person they see. And this next person they see is that guy.
Who wants to force it?
Who wants to force someone to have sex with them. Is that rape?
Somebody who wants to be forced or is okay with being forced.
But unknowingly,
but
that other person
is it
doesn't
forcing?
know that person wants to. The two people don't know each other and their intentions behind
I
anything
see
they
what
do.
you're saying. Right. Yeah, so I guess that would... I mean, I would say yeah, right? Like, they're operating underneath that assumption. And something like rape is all about intention. You can hold the intention without actually... Well, you can hold the intention and just have...
It seems like you can ask two questions, though.
Yeah.
You can ask two questions. You can ask, was it rape? And two, was she raped?
Yeah.
Because I think you can answer yes to one and no to the other.
Oh, right.
Be consistent.
So she wasn't necessarily raped because
I don't think she
consented.
was, but that was an act of rape because of the intention of the guy.
Yeah. And what sort of consequences does it have at all, right? It almost seems like nothing happened here, but somebody
they both got what they wanted out of it. Unknowingly, but they got what they wanted.
Right.
Both of them.
Right. Huh. Shit. That is something to think about. Okay, so what do you think I need to hammer on a little bit better? I guess I'm not an egoist, or maybe I need to like make sure I know what being an egoist is beforehand. I'm definitely utilitarian. No, not necessarily, right? Because I wouldn't want to push to engage with that, so that would make me for the trolley problem. Like I think
you should look up more utilitarian stuff, because there are, apart from like egoism, forgetting that sort of stuff, you can be the main flavors of utilitarianism. Another like subcategory of those, there's like act utilitarianism and rule utilitarianism. I think that's where, if you look at both of those, where I think you'll find your ground, where you want to stand on, basically. That you could have rules of which you don't want to interact with things, and then that gets decided to be ethical or not. So like, you could... I'm not as read on this, so I could be completely like spitting nonsense, which is why I encourage you to look it up afterwards. You could say that there are certain things that you would only engage with in a utilitarian sense. So like the trolley problem, you could say, because they both of the options incur death, that I don't want to interact with that. But if I did, and I am okay with death, like minimal death, let's say, you could answer the question, because there is less death with one option than 5, and you could answer that. But on an act scale, I know even less than that. Many people are rule utilitarians. I know very few act utilitarians, and I haven't spoke to any in depth at all. So, not about that anyway.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm definitely a materialist.
Oh, you wouldn't much have to worry about that unless you're coming across like a theist. I don't think it matters that much, especially not in
Yeah.
politics.
Yeah, but
Can't
I mean,
lose
some
anything
of
that
like
lies on that.
Sargon's arguments are really bad. Like he sort of assumes like some supernatural presence in the world. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but just the way he argues in general, I feel like sort of his whole thing with duty seemed to stem from that, or maybe that thought just wasn't well fleshed out on his point, on his end.
Depends what he means by duty, because he could mean moral duty, and that would be like deontology again.
Yeah.
But it could be Christian, because like moral duty can also be like divine command theory.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you talking about the Tree of Logic thing with him? Because
yeah,
I did watch some of that. I didn't watch it live. I've got so many VODs I have to watch. Oh god.
Here, I was looking at Halsey, like I guess put it up on his YouTube channel, and I looked at the comments. I didn't think I did that well, and I felt like the analogy I'd used wasn't good. Sorry, have you heard me talk about this?
I saw that. Yeah, the comment. That was pretty funny.
I was so happy when I read that. I'm like, somebody got it. I'm so happy. Yeah. But yeah, somebody's like, yeah, Sargon's so-called period of mental growth just results in his new arguments being torn apart in 2 sentences by some random guy. I'm like, that's me. Okay.
I'm gonna put in my Twitter bio that I know Plant Guy.
You know Plant Guy? Yeah.
Yeah, I know Plant Guy.
Yeah. Whenever I show up in like DJG, they're like, oh, it's Plant Guy. Like, Jesus Christ.
I forgot who I was. Oh, I was watching the Halsey debate, and I saw you in chat on the video, and everyone was like, "Hey, Plant Guy."
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't. That entire debate in general, I wish I had like a better like starting point, because I thought we were literally just gonna be like arguing over like women's role and like why they should or should not have rights, but instead it was like a welfare debate, which I mean, this is for my review tomorrow, I guess, for me to think about. If you want to be a part of it, because I'd love to hear your feedback with me and what's his name talking about it. But I feel like some of the examples and my counter arguments were good, but I didn't push back. Like I just presented them without like pushing them, if that makes sense. And that's something I want to get better.
I don't know if I heard the welfare bit.
So his whole deal is like people shouldn't vote unless they are a net giver, I guess, to the economy.
Or a net taxpayer. Yeah, I got that.
Right. So like that was his whole. That's why people on welfare or whatever shouldn't get the right to vote or things like that. I mean, it's like some weird backwards like voter suppression he's engaging, which I'm pretty sure that he knows the problems with, but he just kind of holds it for the sake of holding a position.
Yeah.
Like that. And so like my argument is like, well, wouldn't people who had the right to vote work to keep other like people with opposing views on welfare, so they didn't have a chance to vote, and it'd be like a self-perpetuating system? And fuck, I finally came up with the perfect example of it at some point, because we kept coming back to that same point. And I didn't push it, I just brought it up. And like looking back, I'm like, I bet like his entire fucking world was crushed, because like there's no way you can come up with a counter argument to that. But I didn't push it on him, right? I was just like, well, what about, because I was talking about the fact that the Wall family like lobbies for lower minimum wage so they can pay their employees so that, because they have a lot of employees at part-time role status, so they pay all these individual workers below the amount it takes to get welfare. So basically these people's incomes are supplemented with welfare, which is the tax all of us paying for it instead of Walmart paying for it, right? And so like policies like that would be kept in place in the same like voting thing, so like nobody could ever vote against something like that, because but people at the top could push that without people at the bottom unable to get out of it, if that makes sense. So like they would just wouldn't pay their workers less because the government will supplement for it. But if the government's supplementing for it, you're not a net. You wouldn't be paying more into the system. But yeah, I can like hopefully flesh that out a little bit better tomorrow. Like in general, like I have 2 modes. I don't know if you've probably seen me in both. I either have like the calm version of me, who is just like, that doesn't really make sense. And like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't engage with them like that. I don't think that's right. But then there's like the me that like gets triggered really easily, and I'm just like, "Rah!" And I just like get like I get tunnel vision and I see red. So I'm trying to find somewhere in between with my arguments where I can like calmly dissect the arguments being presented towards me and like reply in a manner that doesn't make me look like I'm a fucking lunatic. So yeah.
I always try and have a calm conversation. I'm good friends with Synth, and Synth likes going off. And I don't like the blood sportsy type of conversations most of the time. Unless it's literally pointless. Like, we've done this for like 3 hours and now we're getting absolutely nowhere. It's kind of... You're a bit fed up after that, so it's kind of warranted there, but I don't think I've ever done it like on stream or anything like that. I think I've only ever done it in like private. So
yeah, I need to find that a good place where I can be calm and not and also be, I guess, positive in my arguments instead of being reactionary.
One thing I would say to the Halsey conversation, especially on like the welfare stuff, well, I guess on its core point of like being a net taxpayer, I'm gonna guess that he's gonna argue for that because it's gonna make more people become net taxpayers. I'm gonna guess is his argument, unless he does want it to be closed off to people that can do that, and it's gonna perpetually stay like that. Because if not, wealth, like, I forget what they call it, wealth mobility is like a massive point you can bring up that either he's going to like concede a lot of moral ground or it's going to shatter his argument. People moving from class to class is very rare.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, there's a lot of data on that. I think there's some of my dog, actually, that I made, so...
All right. I actually would like to have a lot of these conversations in the future. Can I just hit you up on Discord sometimes when I want to chat?
Yeah, if I'm online. Well, even if I'm offline, I will reply to you if I'm awake. If I'm not awake, I'm sorry. I'll do it when I wake up. No, if I'm online, I'm at my desk, so we can always chat if I'm online.
Cool. Okay. Yeah.
Just let me know.
Shit. Yeah, I'm like, oh god, but it's nice to get it going. So, because sometimes I'm like, I'm just not stimulated in the way. Like, I feel like my brain is just being wasted. I'm like watching these shitty plant videos. So it's nice to actually get it going from time to time. I appreciate it.
It's all right.
All right, I'm gonna raid someone. Yeah.
All right.
I have no idea who I'm gonna raid. I got like 14 viewers.